About half a minute. Yeah.
We still haven't fixed it.
All right, good afternoon all, and welcome to the very last full council meeting for this triennium, and welcome to those in the public sector as well. We have no Teams attendees, and no apologies either. Any declarations of interest? There being none, and we have nobody from the public forum. So we have initially some minutes to receive. And so just before we go through that range, because there's 10 lots, just want to be clear on how I intend to deal with the notice of motion that sits on item 11. So the process for a notice of motion is that the person putting up the notice of motion speaks first, then everybody gets a chance to comment, and then the person putting up has the right to reply. I will not be exercising my right to speak first. I think the notice of motion is self-explanatory. Given that we have valedictory speeches to follow this before we go into public excluded, it would be helpful if we don't have too much debate. Don't want to close down the decision making on the notice of motives, and everybody will have a chance to have their say. But while we've been reasonably flexible in the past and allowed people to put their hand up 2 and 3 and 4 times, that'll be slightly restricted this time, given that we've already fleshed out some of the issues at the committee stage. So just working through the minutes of the council meeting on the 26th of August. If we could have a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Thank you, Leslie and Darren. Any discussions relating to that meeting? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried. Minutes of the Bluff Community Board held on the 1st of September. Grant and Barry, any discussions relating to those?
I just want to note the request re the Chief Executive around the staff, around the options available to them for funds. So in the paper, so that's on track.
Noted, Chair.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussions? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the speed review hearing held on the 2nd of September. Hang on, where's my friend? Alan, you want to recommend those?
Those.
Yeah, I thought you might have. Second, Grant. Any discussion about them? No, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Infrastructure and Projects Committee held on the 2nd of September to be received, and recommendations to council. So there are 3 recommendations listed there, 6, 7 and 8. Mover and seconder. Yeah, Grant, thank you.
Second.
Yeah, Leslie, thank you. Any discussions about those and the recommendations? No, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee meeting held on the 9th of September, and it also comes with a received and 2 recommendations as well.
Move that the minutes are received and the 2 recommendations adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. Ria, thank you. Any discussion in particular about the recommendations? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The minutes of the Finance and Policy Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 16th of September.
Moved.
Thank you, Leslie. Grant, thank you. It comes with a recommendation as well, which is a financial update from the 31st of July.
Also moved.
Thank you. Same for a second, Grant?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any discussion about those? Carried. Oh, sorry. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the extraordinary council meeting. Extraordinary Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on the 16th of September.
Move those.
Thank you. Second, Grant again. Any discussion about those? There isn't. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Right, the notice of motion, which I referred to this before. So the notice of motion has 2 motions within it that council accepts upon installation the 2-dog bronze sculpture to be donated by the Invercargill Public Art Trail Charitable Trust. And secondly, a second recommendation or notice that council approves the proposed sculpture installation in East Street as per the paper to the Infrastructure and Projects Committee dated the 2nd of September 2025. I'll waiver my right to talk to this because I've included in the paper the reasons for the motion, and now open it to the floor for people to have a say. Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. So, at that September meeting, we received a paper from Erin Mugan, and I think that paper captured the issue perfectly and actually still reflects my own views. The City Centre Master Plan has 6 guiding principles, which are described in page 358 of these board books, of which one was restore a healthy connection to the environment. That guiding principle formed the basis for the cultural narrative which is included in the streetscape. But there were 5 other guiding principles, all of equal status, and the paper in Erin's name received by the Infrastructure Committee points to the principle urban play to make you stay as the basis for citing the child's small patting statue of 2 dogs on S Street. I think from all the papers that we've received, and there's a lot of them, it's clear that the cultural narrative, although very important, was not the only design principle that was to be used for the street. And I don't think it was ever intended to be to the exclusion of everything else. I'd also point to the wording which is included in page 92 of board books, quoted in the most recent paper, page 92, where the wording of the cultural narrative itself is that its objective is to express mana whenua presence. And so it goes on. I don't think expressing a presence is the same thing as an exclusive right to the space. And I don't believe that that was ever the original intention from what I've read, even by the original authors. I'd also like to point to the importance of the dog in the very earliest Invercargill history. By 1856, when John Kelly had set up his Farah, when people came clustered around there in what eventually became the city, the camera had already been invented, and there are a lot of photographs of that time. And anybody who looks at photographs of crowd scenes from around those days will find dogs. In fact, they'll find a lot of dogs. And just to illustrate that, I brought the book Merihiku, the Southland Story, which actually was partly authored by Michael Skerritt, who's I see with us today. He's credited as one of the authors. And in that, there's a photograph of the earliest surveyors who surveyed the city and surveyed Southland. There's a group of 4 of them, accompanied by their dog, because the dog was used as a working dog to penetrate bush in places that the surveyors could not go. So the dog was present right from the very beginning and played an absolutely key role right from the start of Invercargill's history. So I see no conflict at all between a child's petting statue on S Street and the guiding principles for the design of that streetscape, and so I support it going there. It's a relatively stark streetscape right now, and people, especially children, will be happier for seeing it there. We should not be a killjoy council by preventing that. I would say, though, that I would not support a free-for-all. Any proposals for other statues or artwork should also be considered by council against those original 6 design principles. Thank you.
Thank you. Rainey.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd also like to thank staff at this stage for the background information that's been attached to this agenda item. It's been incredibly helpful. So in 2020, Council worked with an urban design company, Isthmus, and I was part of a working group which was chaired by John Green. To quote its directive, the aim of this project is to establish a cohesive urban design with an emphasis on streetscape character and enhanced spaces for people. basically the central city needs to be a place for people. This meant speed limit reductions in S Street with ample off-street parking. Now, the aim was back then to break Invercargill's shoppers' habit of wanting to park outside the shop they wanted to go to. And that was a real change of culture. And there was even consideration given to narrowing Tay Street to 2 lanes, but this was dismissed. Now, the master plan also stated, in the minutes you'll see, there was an allowance for a cultural opportunity. So for today's agenda item, I wish to refer Council to its donations guidelines for receiving proposed donations, and start with section 5.2, ornamental features. And following on from what Councillor Campbell has already stated, applications will be considered on a case-by-case basis. And my interpretation of this case-by-case basis means that whatever decision is made today, it will not set any precedent. So carrying on with our donations policy, go to section 6 and it says locations. 6.3, approval for a particular site will only be granted if consistent with the ICC's development plan for that site. I go back to the plan that I worked on 5 years ago. That city urban master plan is about enhanced spaces for people. In my opinion, I view the 2 life-size dog statues as fitting in with this theme, as dogs are a very close part of human life and would enhance the people and spaces feel of Lower East Street. So I support the location of the 2 statues there, Chair.
Thank you for your input 5 years ago. Darren.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. It's been really useful for council to have a look at the timelines for what went into the urban design process, and thank the councillors who took part in that, both Councillor Pottinger and Councillor Crackett at the time, through stage 1. It's a shame that the potential discussion is at risk of being derailed around cultural issues, and it's useful that Councillor Pottinger referred to the donations policy, which is quite accurate. Ultimately, council decides where things go. It's not something that's dictated to by a donor in this instance. And I don't want people to think that we're not grateful for the donation of art for civic purposes, because we are. The thing is, everything is in its place. And it's not an issue of exclusivity that I think some people have become a little focused on. It's what fits where. Applying that in the purest sense, the donation you'd put at the dog park on Ellis Road, but that would be tremendously disrespectful. The dogs, as portrayed, are 2 Labradors, tennis ball. They were not dogs that were being used around the time of John Kelly. There were no Labradors in the country at that point. And so maybe if the breed had been different. The fact is, there is a narrative that is developed, and we look for stuff that's synergist, not exclusive, but synergist with it. Why else would the donated statue of Alex Lithgow be sitting outside this building? Because he's one of our cultural icons, as is this space. And I think the story that has developed in Esk Street, and on a beautiful day like this, wandering down here during the school holidays, the interaction that was going on with everything the street furniture, 3-year-olds doing parkour. It scared the living daylights out of me for a few moments. But they are engaging, and that's great. And I take the point that children would engage with, a statue of dogs, because kids like that. But it just doesn't quite fit in that space. I think there are some really good prominent spaces in the centre of town where it could, but in my mind, just not quite there. And so for that reason, following through what was developed with ISMIS, what Council adopted, and what has developed partially in consultation, but also partially by fateful design, there's something that people feel a connection to. Obviously something that some don't, and that's fine, I respect that position. But it's just not quite the right piece in the jigsaw for me. There is absolutely a place, and it's a nice piece of art, but it's just not where it's proposed in Esk Street in my mind. For that reason, Mayor Clark, I'll be voting against the notice of motion.
Thank you for your input. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to make the comment that I am somewhat surprised that we even have this notice of motion today from a process point of view, since under Standing Order 28.2, Section D, matters that are already the subject of reports and recommendations from a committee to the meeting concerned, that is today's meeting, do not need a notice of motion. However, since we actually have a notice of motion in front of us, I would like to make several comments. First of all, the extensive background has been very useful. I want to first of all comment on the matter of the original application for funding for this particular statue, where the applicants made it clear, and in fact I quote the sentence, "We are happy to discuss with Invercargill City Council any ideas for where the sculpture could be situated." The Community Wellbeing Fund Subcommittee, who actually contributed to the funding of the statue, public funding, made the comment, "Not likely to be in Esk Street," noting that there was currently a cultural narrative regarding the streetscape and to ensure that the location was appropriate. Very appropriate comments from that particular subcommittee at that time in making the decision on funding towards that particular project. Looking further at the background, going back to as far as 2020, and I would have to say actually it's probably started in 2019, we have the whole extensive matter of the city centre master plan and its creation, and the amount of actual consultation with the community that went into that process, and the principles referred to in coming to that city centre master plan. There was very clearly process-wise decisions made, and very clearly a cultural narrative that dealt with settlement, and I would have to say that I agree with Councillor Ludlow's comment that Labrador dogs were not part of the original settlement of this city, or indeed most parts of New Zealand. The cultural narrative was about settlement, acknowledging the original settlement and acknowledging the importance of food gathering and food sharing. We have a couple of small areas of city streets that exemplify that cultural narrative that we saw and our community saw as extremely important in the process of putting together our enhanced city centre and its development and its streetscape going forward. To me, this statue not only has not yet actually complied with our donations policy and the following report on the notice of motion makes it quite clear that there are still steps to go through. But to me, this comes down very much to a process matter. Undertakings were made, processes were put in place. There are some clear steps and narrative that we have put very clearly into place. What is appropriate for this small area of our city is what actually enhances the narrative that we originally set in place. There are ample other parts of the city appropriately where elements of play can be put in place, and such things as Labrador statues with tennis balls and possibly leads or large branches. Not quite sure when you look at the illustration which one is there. None of which were probably quite in place in the 1800s, could be put where they would actually enhance the story of the city. But to say that enhancing the story of the city, that this council has very much put in place in what is currently in the S Street area and the Don Street area, by this particular statue, which could be placed in ample other sites, which, as the original applicant said, they were happy to discuss with Invercargill City Council, any sites at all. There is no requirement of this council to fall in with any particular wishes about any particular piece of material that may be donated. We even turn down items that are donated to our museum and our art gallery if they do not fit our criteria. In this case, we have actually contributed to a statue but left open the appropriate place for that particular statue to be to enhance the community. I will be voting against this notice of motion, because I do not think it is an appropriate notice of motion. It does not assist with forwarding this project at all, and it does not assist with forwarding the story we are committed to telling about this city.
Thank you. Barry.
Yep. I acknowledge the importance of Ngāi Tahu and the history of in the history of our city, but the Europeans were part of this history as well. I don't feel as though one culture has the right to have exclusive rights to a street. We've got a multicultural society in Southland, and I do not agree that one culture can have control of a street. I've talked to a lot of the owners in Esk Street today about what they thought of if a dog's sculpture was to be put there, and a lot of them said, can it go outside my shop? So I don't see the relevance in letting one culture have complete control of any streets. Where does it go to from there? Do we go to other streets and say, no, you can't put anything in there either? And it worries me about our museum, our Museum of Southland, and what would happen if one culture is just having a say in that. So I will be voting for the artwork to go in East Street.
Thank you. Trish?
Thank you. I see this as a matter of process. As the chair of the Wellbeing Fund, we did, Leslie clearly indicated what we had said, and it was our intention. I said it was not likely to be in Esk Street. But what I have concerns about is that we were told at the infrastructure meeting that installing the two-dog sculpture in Esk Street was breaching a commitment made by council that Esk Street was a street with sole exclusive rights to Ngāi Tahu for their story. It is incorrect, and it is not for exclusive commitment to Ngāi Tahu, which I totally support, and I love the story. So, but on the basis of process, I will be voting for number 2 to approve it to go into Esk Street.
Maria?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When I first moved to Invercargill from Christchurch, this town was pretty dismal. There wasn't a lot going for it for teenagers. Thankfully, since then, on the forward-thinking decisions of councillors over the years, this town now has a lot going for it, especially for young ones coming to it. In our meeting, we were presented on the 2nd of September this consideration through public excluded, and at the time I wondered why it was even in there. And the reasons that were given, to me, didn't quite meet why that should go into the public excluded agenda in its entirety. And I thank the Mayor for bringing this notice of motion to us so that we can deal with it in a public forum, so every sitting elected member can be held to account and we're transparent with what we're voting on. When we set, so I guess coming from the process side, and will hopefully articulate this well, I'm disappointed at the lack of information that this council has consistently received when we are looking at recommendations to make governance decisions on. And the document that we received on the 2nd of December just further erodes the fact that we didn't have enough information to make that decision at that time, which is rightfully why we're here now at a full council meeting, moving through the notice of motion the Mayor's put forward. And I do hope that in the future that councillors are set up with more information to make more successful decisions, that we're making the right governance decisions. The information we received on the notice of motion and the background information is far more substantial than the document we received at the infrastructure meeting, and that disappoints me, and I do hope that this will be improved in the next triennium for councillors so that we are making good decisions based on good governance, facts and information. When I come to the Community Wellbeing Committee, when we consider the application, Councillor Soper, Councillor Trish Boyle is quite rightfully so. When we considered the application, those were on the basis that we made those considerations and gave that commentary back. When I looked at the statute in our documents provided of the 2 Labradors, my first thought was, well, how are they historically significant to our city? How are these creatures that are man's best friend relevant to the agriculture of our foundations to our city and the people in our farming sector? I think sheepdogs were probably more appropriate. But nevertheless, I do like to see art in our city. I do like to see children and our family and members interacting and looking at them and enjoying what we've got, because we've never had that in the past. What I struggle with is the fact that the donation guides policy, as Councillor Pottinger pointed out, this to me comes under the section of a case-by-case notice, that we must make considerations. And further to the clause of 6.3 about where they're to go in the street telling story, is quite obvious when you're reading through those documents what the intention was and back them under the urban streetscape. So to cut a long story short, I've spoken to many people that have impairments to the city, and the concern from them were that the statues were too small. Even if they were going on a plinth, that they could be a hazard to them, and they hadn't been consulted with, they felt fairly on this matter, and that they were concerned that they would trip or have some mishap with them. And then I was told that they are much bigger than what I was led to believe they were at that time when making the decision not to support it. So given the concern from our impaired community members about them maybe being a hazard, justifies to me that there's still so many questions from members of our community as to what is the right decision to make, and there is no right or wrong. Because when you pull the culture narrative, as has been done in this situation, we need to learn to live together, to enjoy our community, to enjoy our family that we say we are here to represent. If we're going to keep pulling the culture card, we're going to keep coming up against historical oppression and ignorance and anger. And I have felt that around this room at times. So when I come to, do I support the notice of motion or do I not? I support us having bronze statues in the city, like the dogs. I support us having a city that is vibrant to our community, that pay their rates to live here and give us our jobs around this table. I also support the narrative that was quite intensely worked on in terms of working together. And I see the debate from a cultural position to be unhelpful in today's modern world. We swore an oath to do the best for our city when we became councillors, and a decision like this has to be the best for our city. And on that basis, I'm going to support the notion of motion.
Thank you, councillor. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. This is something I love about being around this table, is hearing a range of different perspectives and ways of looking at a problem or an opportunity. So I've appreciated what my fellow councillors have had to share this morning. Here's mine. I just want to make it really clear from the start that I'm a huge advocate for art in the city. I've supported this consistently. I want more. And I also love what this art trust is. I love their vision and what they're trying to do in this city and what they've offered our city through the sculpture. I'm also on the Community Wellbeing Fund subcommittee that supported this group with $15,000 of community money towards its creation. And I am excited about having these dogs somewhere in our city. But this situation for me has made an issue out of something that it just isn't about for me. As I prepared for this meeting and read some of the media coverage and comments being made, I've concluded that this decision is really a reflection of how we decide to see the world, the filter that we apply, the problems or the opportunities, and how we see each other and work together as a community, and how we respond as leaders. I've decided that if we're intent enough on seeing division, chaos and drama, then we'll see it or we'll create it. The issue for me is simply about how we storytell in our city and the opportunities that come to cities that tell and understand their stories well, that lean into them and capitalise on it. We've set aside parts of our city consistently to tell our story. Most of our streets are named after Scottish rivers in the heart of the city. A decision made to honour a part of our heritage. We spend huge money on the facades of buildings like the Southland Times because it was such an important part of our story and who we are. Even just the facade was worth protecting for our community. Council created a vision for our city, a city with heart, and part of the development of S Street included the opportunity to tell one of my favourite stories in our city that I've come to understand better. The importance of the land we stand on in the heart of the city as a food basket that gathered people together, but also of the continued importance of kai and food in our region. That's not a story I am threatened by or one that I believe belongs solely to iwi. It is our story. And it is a story, as I've done my research, that has been told by some of some of our key partners and strategies to uphold and uplift and celebrate and tell far more of. So I have 4 in front of me. The Murihuku Southland Destination Strategy Implementation Plan, 2019, I believe, Great South. By supporting and developing the regional food stories, Southland could become a key food tourism destination. Opportunity, right? Food tourism is defined as any tourism experience in which one learns about, appreciates and or consumes food and drink that reflects the local heritage, culture, tradition or culinary techniques of that region. It's been proven time and time again. Food tourism is an opportunity and we've been told to get ahead of it, understand it and lean into it. What else have we got? The Southland Murihuku Food Tourism Opportunity Assessment commissioned by Eat New Zealand. Amazing document, read it, so that it doesn't become a strategy which sits on a shelf and gathers dust like so many that came before. This says food tourism is a huge and growing industry. Any destination looking to capture the market should ensure that it prioritises the authentic and celebrates the traditions of that region. Southland will need to find its place against other regions. We've had a steer towards food practices including mahinga kai, the wildness of our region and kai. Seafood, all unique parts of our story. Barriers to that, a lack of connection to the original and indigenous food stories of Southland. And it outlines time and time again the economic benefits of leaning in. Key strategies in action that we can grab a hold of. Support and share the Southland food story. Feeding Murahuku, the Good Food Roadmap to support food security and food resilience in Southland. Their first PO strategy is about celebrating the Kai story that reflects who we are as a region. Are we listening? The story hasn't just been mandated and supported by our council, but also key partners in our city. The problem we have today is the lens that is being applied. Their story, the othering, the Ngāi Tahu story, Kai Tahu story. It's just noise to me. It is our story, and if we tuned in and started to see that story, that we've started as a part of a massive opportunity for our city rather than one that needs to divide us. The more I dove into this over the last few weeks, the more excited I got. Great cities are clear in their identity. They tell their story with courage, boldness, and leadership. They protect their spaces for their stories. I actually love the dogs, and I'm excited about finding them a perfect home in our city to help support other stories and other parts of who we are as a city. Spaces that are better suited for two labs with a tennis ball and stick. But S Street is not that perfect home for these sculptures for me. Let's not make it about what it's not. We've done this multiple times and other great cities do it, lean in, capitalise and protect our best stories and part of our identity. I truly believe that if we do it here and look for opportunities to develop and grow this story, bring even this trust along and into the story, it can be a huge part of what brings our community and guests into the heart of our city. So I'm voting against this notice of motion.
Thank you for your feedback. Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Clark. Look, as chair of the committee that's put the recommendation through, I just want to sort of make it clear that I certainly didn't hear any claim of exclusivity around a story. I may have missed something, but I certainly didn't hear that, and I think that's important to correct on the record. This to me represents how we lift the story of Invercargill in terms of its origination and, talking to, and what this has prompted me to do is go and dig a bit deeper around where that started. And it did indeed start pretty close to East Street, and it did start with John Kelly and his whānau, and there's a really powerful story I think we need to lift up around that's where we started. And I want you to think about someone that's arriving in our city, and it could be a young child from the suburbs coming into the city, it could be a visitor from offshore coming into a city, and they scan a QR code, and then they get lifted up the story of John Kelly and how that, how we were started as a village and then became a city. And then they can go down East Street and they can identify all the objects that are there now. And then they can head down to our new museum and see our two waka that are on the museum. And they can get a much deeper and richer story of how we connect to Bluff, how we connect to Kirio Bay, how we connect to the Hokanuis. And I think that's the thing that I want to bring forward. And so what I see in this is that we have a really unique creation in East Street now. It's remiss of us that we haven't lifted that up and made it accessible to our community and also to others that come to our city. But there's something to be really proud about that. And so I think it connects really strongly to Te Anua and what we're creating there. And I'd like to see a visitor come to our city and scan a QR code and get that story and then go down and connect not only to other parts of Invercargill but to other parts of our region, which I'm really proud of. And so, I still stand by the decision that we made in infrastructure. I think this is a lovely offering we've received from the arts community, and we certainly want to accept it. However, I think, in art, sometimes the more simply that it sits, the more powerful the story. And I think we need to preserve what we have there now. And so I'm sticking with what we recommended through to the council, and I don't support the notice of motion.
Any further discussions? Yeah, Alex.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. A lot of what I was going to say has been said already, so I thank Councillors Soper, Ludlow, Broad and Dermody for absolutely stating much of what's going on in my mind at the moment. especially Councillor Soper, in the fact that 28.2 Section D of standing orders means that because this is already up for discussion, it shouldn't actually be on the table. I was also, as Councillor Ludlow said, on the Streetscape group, and can hand on heart attest to the fact that we reserved that space not for exclusivity, and that, like Councillor Dermody has said, was never anything that crossed the table. It was never about exclusivity. It was always about storytelling. And also, sitting on the Community Wellbeing Fund, I'm somewhat aggrieved that we were not more stronger in our wording of saying anywhere else but Esk Street. And I really don't think that's unreasonable, that we've got a storytelling narrative there that we have invested in as a city, and we cannot just remain the 2-metre strip down the road to that exact narrative. I think it's like literally anywhere else. I do not think that's unreasonable. Can you just pick anywhere else in the city aside from that 2-metre strip down Esk Street that is reserved for our cultural narrative? Again, to reiterate, no one has really mentioned exclusivity. I think, like, to be fair, I'm actually just really disappointed that this notice of motion is on the table, and this is the way that you have chosen to see out this triennium. I'm really grateful for the Arts Trust itself. I absolutely welcome the dogs, to the point where we've obviously contributed $15,000 towards it of public money. It's very clear that we support it. It's very clear that we want it to occur. That was also in the original motion. We are very grateful to accept it. We were just stating not, like, literally anywhere but here, and that is not an unreasonable thing to do. So, as you can probably clearly tell, I will be voting against the notice of motion.
Yep, thank you. Evelyn.
Kora matua, e te whānau e noho mai nei. Councillor Dermody, thank you for saying that at no time during the public excluded, non-recorded session did I say anything about exclusivity. What I talked about was process. What I talked about was how the narrative came to be and the intention of the narrative. I reiterated several times that it was a council decision to adopt the narrative, that high level, and that it should not be for donors or anybody else to change that narrative. That is something that had to be intentionally council. Now, other people may remember it differently, and that's fine, because our brains are as old as the rest of us, and we don't always remember things perfectly, and I am included in that. However, what I will say is, in 1830, dogs were imported from Newfoundland to the UK to start the process that became Labradors. Labradors as a breed did not become quite distinctive until sometime quite later than 1856. Whilst dogs and New Zealand have always been synonymous, including the fact that they came on waka, that is not the intent of the story. The intent of the story that the cultural narrative tells is this: the welcome of strangers. And I said that at the meeting. I said this was, the gold statue is monarchy. It is the outreach, the embrace of the women of the South to those who came here. They weren't all very lovable characters, including my ancestor. They were not the creme de la creme of anybody's society, but they were the foundation of what we now know as Southland. The narrative that the story tells in the lower part of Esk Street, you know, we didn't change the name of the street. It's still Esk Street. The narrative is about food. It is about water. It is about ocean. It is about forest. And it was about two peoples, because John Kelly's family included two of his three children that we know of from his three different Māori relationships or wives, as well as Mrs. Niven and her children, and subsequently the child they had together, who was claimed as the first child born in Invercargill. Pāua, kina, pātiki, tuna, hua whenua, hua manu, birds' eggs, all those things. I acknowledge the generosity of Steve's rather distant relation who donated the weka, which was incorporated seamlessly into the narrative because weka lived in our forests, and weka are mischief birds, and the weka was being mischievous. We had swamps, we had all of those things, and that is the story that it tells. But it doesn't exclude anybody, because the kāhui rama is all of those other people, the people that have come to share the space. So that is the light standards. But most of all, what I resent, if I'm going to be really honest, is the fact that a matter that was in public excluded, so that meant that I could not consult my executive, my whānau, my support systems about any of that, and I couldn't tell them about the outcome, even if they guessed that there was a matter that there might be an outcome to, because it was public excluded. And I take seriously the fact that whether we all agreed that it should be in public excluded or not, it was, and therefore was not to be discussed with anybody outside. And the fact that I wake up and find it on the front page of the paper, courtesy of indiscreet remarks to whoever, offends me, because it diminishes the integrity of this table. If I had been the person who had breached that, the conversation today would have been all about beating up Evelyn. I would remind people too, I always give people respect. I am the Reverend Evelyn Cook. I am the mana whenua rep. I am not Evelyn when I sit at this table. I am Reverend Cook, just as the mayor in my reo is the koromatua. Always give respect. And that means that the intention of the table when they made the decision, and when they made the donations policy, and when they made all those other decisions that we are talking about today, they all matter. They all count. They're not to be dismissed because somebody else unelected, because I've had that thrown at me too this last week. How dare these unelected people? May I point out, generous as the gift is, that the Invercargill Public Art Trail Trust is unelected. They don't have the right to tell this council where anything goes. They have the right to offer. I appreciate the offer. I love Labradors, but they didn't exist in this city in 1856. I'm not sure where we go from here, but what I do think, and I appreciate what has been said, sometimes the cultural thing has been raised as a means of sidelining of trivialising, of undermining the work that many people have done to make this project successful. I look across, thank you Russell for being in the room, Mr Pearson. You were a big part of this project, as were many other people who are sitting in this room. The important thing is that there are places where things belong. Alex Lithgow belongs out there. We have got war memorials, and that's where you put the monuments to those who fought. So that's where the statues to all those slightly distorted military figures is down near the war memorial. The place to mourn the dead, the fallen in the wars. I noticed that in the notice of motion, the Koromatua refers to other places where Ngāi Tahu stories are starting to be told. They're not the same story though. They may be the precursor, they may be something that comes later. But life is a continuum. But may I really point out to you all that there are other places where two bronze statues, or one bronze statue connected together, I'm not quite sure about that, with a tennis ball and a branch or a leash could comfortably fit, but it doesn't fit beside a weka, it doesn't fit beside birds' eggs, it doesn't fit beside flounders, pātiki, it doesn't fit beside kina, it doesn't fit beside pawa, because that's not the story that Labrador dogs tell. The generosity of the donors, the thoughtfulness of the Community Wellbeing Fund in offering to support the project, all of those things are recognised. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the process by which we came to have something that was not asked for become a bone of contention. But also the breach of etiquette that took this from a decision made by the public excluded meeting of the Infrastructure Committee to the front pages of the Southland Times, and here to be this public spectacle was totally unnecessary. And I reiterate, had I been the person who breached that confidentiality, I would expect to be reprimanded for it, albeit that this is my last formal meeting. And I am disappointed that that is not something that we have the ability to do anything about. It is disrespectful to everybody who sat at that meeting and intentionally did not go outside and discuss it. I don't get a vote. And it seems to me that probably on the balance of numbers, that we will have those statues in Esk Street, will we, won't we? And the mamae that will be in my ngākau as I walk down that street will be felt for the rest of my life. Not because I dislike Labrador dogs or don't want Labrador statues in the city, but because the process by which this has been done is so deeply flawed and is so deeply tainted by we're not going to let Ngāi Tahu have their way and their say. This is not exclusively a Ngāi Tahu story that is told by that narrative. It is the story of the welcome of strangers. And apart from 3 people in this room who descend by whakapapa from Kaitahu, 3 people that I am aware of, everybody here has been the beneficiary of that welcome. Everybody. Nobody is excluded from the welcome, but I am now feeling excluded from my place of birth because the mana of my whānau is being undermined by factors that are even outside of this council's control, because some people deem it more important that the dominant story should be the coloniser's story. The coloniser is included in the welcome of strangers. I am a product of colonisation. Look at me. I don't deny my Scottish and English heritage, but I don't have a need to talk about it. It's all around me every day. You have to go as far as Victoria Avenue to find anything that isn't Scottish in a street name. You have to go a lot further than that to find anything that reflects my cultural heritage on my mother's side. When we talk about these things, they are important. Our tamariki mokopuna have a right to see what they would have seen in 1856, even if it is only cast in bronze. But they would never have seen a Labrador dog in 1856. So can we have some consistency in our narrative? Can we have one space in this city where the story that is told is this story? That you were welcome, that we showed you how to sustain yourselves with food, that we encouraged you to be here, and that this is as much the place of your mokopuna as it is of mine, but that somewhere in this city, where the city was founded, is the right place to honour the story of my kaitahu tūpuna, the place where the city started. I don't think it's too much to ask. I'm sad that we have had to have this conversation. I know that nothing I say will change people's minds, but I do urge you to stop and think, those of you who think it's not important, that it is important, that I don't look up and see in the centre of a city that a place that says Mamoi Street or Tahu Portaki Street, as I would if I went to some other places in this country, that celebrate the tūpuna of those people. What we have is some cultural elements. I didn't think that was a big ask, and I was proud to be part of the process. I'm sad that it's come to this, but you will do what you will do. Kurumashwa, this is not how I expected my last formal meeting to be. It is not what I would have desired for the last formal meeting for Councillor Soper, who has given so much to our community. And for all those staff, all those artists, all those craftspeople who created that story, I apologise that I cannot protect the integrity of that story. I feel like I am letting people down. But I know that I have tried my hardest, without undermining the process, to advocate for the integrity of that story. So for those of you who have spoken on behalf of it today, I thank you very much. And for those of you who don't think that it matters, I will pray for you tonight in Te Reo, as I always do, that you may see the light, that you may understand, and that you may come to regard what you take for granted in the places that you come from as your birthright. I rejoice for you. I just grieve for my mokopuna. Kia ora.
Thank you. Alan.
Right, well, I've just got a couple of small points to make. is that Esk Street has been designed as a shared space for cars and people, and as I look around in Invercargill, it's the only place that's been designed in this way. A lot of money was spent to create this, and as much as I appreciate the narrative of the story, and I have small children and they do love the sculptures along there, I think an area like this also needs rejuvenation and additions from time to time. And the fact that someone's prepared to do something, a couple of dogs, Labradors, so be it. They're going to be sitting on a bench, so I don't see them as an impediment to people who have sight issues. I think when my kids come here, they see those, they're going to love it. And I think that's what Esk Street is for us, and it's the only place that has been designed in this way for us in the city. So in saying that, I'm going to vote for the notice of motion.
Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask Evelyn a question, please? Mr. Mayor?
Last meeting, I suppose we can have a little bit of flexibility.
Sorry?
Last meeting, a little bit of flexibility, but don't want to get across the table debate.
Evelyn, my friends at the Marae call you Auntie Evelyn. Would I offend you if I called you Auntie Evelyn?
Given that you're older than me, Peter. Councillor Kett. With due respect, if you wish to call me Auntie, you may, but you are actually my elder.
Thank you. All right, that's what's on the table at the moment. These dogs that we're talking about, they're used as a guide dog, assistance dog, and a great companion pet. They're a lovely, kind, gentle, large animal. I love them. My grandson has got one. He must hear my car coming down the road when the dog wants out, and always has a gift in his mouth for me. I really love that dog. I'm really a cat person, but I love all animals. I believe this statue should be in the pride of place, so everyone can enjoy it. And I say now that we should accept this great gift. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody's had a chance to speak to that. I have the right to reply now, so I will be brief in that respect. Oh, sorry, Pania.
I actually don't get to vote on this either, but I do want to api Evelyn and her kōrero around East Street, and also disappointed that we are here today discussing this again after making a decision within the infrastructure excluded meeting. I'm also probably disappointed around the Wellbeing Fund and the expectation noted when the funding was granted that East Street was not the ideal location. I do also want to acknowledge the sculptures themselves. You know, it's a beautiful gift and it's been well supported. But they actually belong in a green space. When I see a dog with a ball, a dog with a stick, I do not see them in East Street. I see them in a green space, in a park where kids can enjoy them. So I actually want to acknowledge all those around the table that have not supported the notion of motion, and literally also want to acknowledge those councillors that don't have a very good understanding on how we work culturally together, because it's disappointing to hear that this has become another cultural matter on the table for this council.
Thank you. Okay, everybody's had their say. Some brief comments from me, and they will be brief. And I'll just go through a couple of points that were raised by speakers, which I have a right to do. Leslie raised the issue about Standing Orders 28.2, and that a refusal of a notice of motion can occur if the matter is, a recommendation has already been made by the committee. But those that were present at the committee know full well that there was no recommendation. Committee doesn't have a right to make a decision. That sits solely with council, which is why we're here today. They made a recommendation. They didn't make a recommendation, and had they, it would have come to here anyway. You can't make decisions at committee level.
It's not true.
Well, hang on. I sat very quietly while everybody else spoke, and I'd be really appreciative if I got the same level of silence as well. Ria, you raised the issue about potential hazard tripping for disabled. The recommendation that came through Erin's paper after consultation with the Art Trust trustees was that would be installed on the seating to avoid any potential tripping hazard. So it's not on the ground, it's not a ground level issue, it's about 1 metre high. I've also looked through all the papers that were presented by staff, and I think, as you rightly said, Ria, it left me a little bit confused that we got very little information to the committee level, and yet when I put up a notice of motion, I get 16 papers coming to me and 339 pages. It's a massive amount of information. When I've been through that information, I've been through twice now, it's clear to me that when you look at what Alex and Rangi and John's team did on the streetscapes, at that stage there was no mention of a Ngaitahu story. It came later. So when you look at the pictures that were approved by councils, and they're in the papers that were disclosed to us, there is no acknowledgement of that. It came later. And so when we talk about the donation policy, I find that a little bit hard to understand, because clearly, unless we've missed some information from staff, clearly neither John's group or Ngaitahu sought a donation application through the process. And I guess it's reasonable to say that Steve, and puts Steve under the microscope a little bit, his extended family probably also didn't put an application in to put the plaque and the weka in S Street. And so they are, I guess, technical breaches of the policy. So if that's the case, then why are we making this a condition to do? But I'll go no further than saying that. And I'm happy to now put the vote in a division. So it'll be a show of hands. We have two parts of the notice of motion. So I'll put the first part first, which is that we... a seconder for the notice of motion. Barry, thank you. And so the initial part one, is that council accepts upon installation the 2-dog bronze sculpture to be donated by the Invercargill Public Art Trail Charitable Trust. And so we've got a mover and a second to that. I want a show of hands of the people that support that initial part.
Sorry, through yourself, Your Worship, I just need to refer to the item around the breach of policy that was raised. Those items were constructed by council in relation to the items that are currently in S Street, so they were a council asset that was actually, and not a donation. So just wanted on the record there was no breach of policy in relation to those items, but right. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine. So we've got item number 1. All those in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. You got those names, Michael? Just doing it slowly, so Michael.
So don't you have to receive the notice of motion in the first instance?
There's two parts to the notice of motion. The first part reads, and I'll read it again, that council accepts upon installation the 2-dog bronze sculpture to be donated by the Invercargill Public Art Trail Charitable Trust.
Point of order here.
Order, yeah.
Recommendations are down below.
Recommendations are contained in the body of the notice of motion. They aren't on the screen. If the council would like them on the screen, then we would need a brief adjournment so we can get them typed up. If the councillors would like to see the wording on the screen, then I would ask Mayor Clark for a brief adjournment so we can achieve that. Otherwise, the wording is as is set out in your document at page 85 of the agenda on board books.
Right in front of you.
Point of order then,
Yes.
because that first part to the notice of motion does need some elucidation so that councillors are clear exactly what they're voting on. It would appear that the intent of the first part is to overtake the donations policy, which is raised in the next paper at tab 12 as something that an outside doning body, such as this trust, needs to apply to council through. Would overtake council's own donation policy and therefore raise issues under section 80 of the Local Government Act, where we would have to justify why we have stepped outside of our own policy. And I do not see the justification there, so I do not see that number one is actually achieving what I believe it states. So I would like some elucidation on, does this number one notice of motion actually overtake council's own donations policy?
Okay, so in relation to standing orders, I have a comment on that. I find it rather ironical, councillor, that you raise this when you didn't raise the same issue when it was presented to the committee. In fact, you actually approved a statement at the committee that accepted the statutes, but went on to say that they didn't accept the placement in S3. From the chair, I will rule that it's okay to do this. We've already had our senior management approach the trustees about the acceptance of this and also the possible location of the what's name. So again, I'll put that recommendation. Michael, do we need to have it up on the board?
Councillors wish to see it on the board, then that's the easiest way.
They've got copies of it, but if you wish to have it put up, then we'll have a brief adjournment. We'll put it up so you can see it. But it is already in the meeting agenda. Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Procedurally, don't you need to have a vote to receive the notice of motion in the first instance?
Procedurally, the notice of motion has two parts to it, and that is what is set out by Mayor Clark. The notice of motion doesn't of itself need to be received, but procedurally we have always done so. You are quite correct in that. So it will need to be received at some stage. But the 2 points that the notice of motion are actually raising are the points of the notice of motion. So to make that make more sense to everybody watching the live stream, yes, we will need to receive the notice of motion.
As an initial step.
Yes, correct. As an initial step, as the first move, receive the notice of motion, and then you can complete your 2 points that will become resolutions from that.
Well, I'll just seek some clarification on that before Tom speaks to it. My advice from you was that that notices of motion can be lodged by any member and doesn't require the full council to agree to it. The process for turning away a notice of motion sits squarely between the chief executive and the chair of the committee or the chair of council.
No, that is quite correct, Mayor Clark. The notice of motion can be declined if it doesn't meet the criteria set out in Standing Orders 28.2, of which discussion has been had today. So the chief executive can decide that. Once that has been passed, it then goes on to the agenda. And the way a notice of motion is then defeated is either it doesn't receive a seconder, which this one has, or it is then the 2 motions contained in the notice of motion are defeated. To receive the notice of motion at the meeting is nothing more than a procedural step.
Right, no, the procedural step is, yeah, Rangi.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, my comment is just regarding the query about the application under the donations policy. I actually see this, what we have in our agenda, as an application. It covers both the request for the donation and also covers 6.2.1, which is requesting the location. So what we have in front of us is a application, and it's in front of the highest court in our council. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you for that comment. Right, a mover and Barry, still a seconder, that we receive the notice of motion. All those in favour, show of hands.
Oh.
Any dissent? Opposed? One. You want them recorded? So if we can just get the ones opposed. Leslie, Steve, Alex, Ria and Darren. 5 against.
And Grant.
Oh, Grant. 6 against. That means 7 are in favour. So the notice of motion is tabled. Right, going back to item number 1, or recommendation 1. The council accepts upon installation the 2 dogs bronze sculpture to be donated by the Invercargill Public Art Trail Charitable Trust.
Yeah, Clark, just a quick question. With it being a notice of motion, it's all or nothing. So you
Okay.
might as well put them both.
Okay, thank you. Happy to do that. So the second part of that notice of motion is that council approves the proposed structure, the proposed sculpture installation in S Street as per the paper to the Infrastructure and Projects Committee dated the 2nd of September 2025. So we have those 2 factions. And again, a show of hands, and do this slowly so that Michael can record those in favour of those 2 issues. So if those are in favour, could just raise their hands. Those opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Just so everyone's that there are 7 in favour, 6 against. So the notice of motion is carried.
Thank you very much. All right. I'll just carry on and get these out of the way. So we've just got some. Yep. A little bit. Yep. So we have some other items to consider before we get to the valedictory speeches, and before that we'll have a brief break. So item 12 is a notice of motion, which is the officer's report on S Street summary, which is what we've been discussing already. That was presented recently. So that's the cluster of reports, I think 15 or 16 from memory. So we just need to move to accept those. A mover. Tom. I'll second. All those in favour of accepting the advice that was given by staff?
Moving 1 and 2.
Just moving 1 at the stage. All those in favour of 1? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? On the issue of 2, I'll open up for some slight debate on that, if you wish, because it would seem to me, given the decision we've already made on the notice of motion, that this becomes a little bit surplus.
Point is moot.
Sorry?
The point is moot now.
So, I know we don't need it, but just for those listening in, could you explain that?
So because council in its previous resolution has resolved to place the statues, asking in Esk Street, asking the charitable trust to apply seems to be a moot point, a waste of effort. It's already decided.
Yep, Michael.
Yeah, thank you through yourself, Chair. Based on the previous decision, the officers would recommend to withdraw that recommendation from the table.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the letter of appreciation from Connected Murihiku, Pānia, your area.
Yes, I just wanted to actually acknowledge the council in regards to Connected Murihiku. If it wasn't for your support and helping us get the momentum across the community and establishing those connections, we would not have been able to progress to where we are today. And and especially to the staff that supported us on that journey as well, were really instrumental in helping us as well. Moving forward with the development of our strategic plan, which we're now moving on to, we actually really do look forward to that continued partnership and support going forward. But it's been an amazing journey. It's connected a lot of our community, and it has actually strengthened that collaboration and working together. So, again, thank you for your support.
So thank you for your work that you've done on that committee, on that group. Just a quick question from me. Part of the original specification was that the coordinator that you had would look to future funding for the organisation. So where's that at? Does it, as you go forward, do you still require support from the traditional funders?
Yeah, we're just in the process of looking at a backbone organisation and support within that. Monday, we had a strategic planning meeting with all the organisations that are involved. There is a lot of enthusiasm in looking at what the next stages will be down the track. Yep. But like anything, I mean, this is an excellent... it started off as a project, but I think it's now got legs and arms in that sense. But a great thing where it can support community wellbeing, so where actually benefits councils as a whole across Murihiku. So I think that there's an opportunity on what that looks like going forward and how we work together, because literally it works both ways in, one, supporting community growth and development, but two, sustainability. So, look forward to
So
in
the second
future.
question to that is, post the election, will you still be involved?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yep, thank you for that. Okay, if I could have a mover and a seconder to accept their letter of appreciation. Trish, thank you. Grant, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Feedback to the Local Government Commission Southland Reorganisation Proposed Investigation Plan. Rhiannon, welcome to the table for the last time this term.
Kia ora, everyone. So this report provides you with draft feedback for the Local Government Commission around the process. So I will take the report as read, but I will just note a few things now. Just to be clear that they have asked our feedback on the process only, and that's what the report speaks to. It doesn't speak to any potential outcomes of that process itself. It does and is based on the discussions that you all had as part of a workshop regarding what your feedback would be. So I hope that I've reflected the key points that you have raised appropriately, and now's the opportunity if anything has been missed. In addition, that we have been having some discussions just around alignment, and again it's around the process with some of the other councils and Te Marama, and that's in response to the Local Government Commission request that we align as far as possible, and in order that there be a joint voice on those issues where everyone agrees. And so some of those matters which you yourselves discussed at that workshop, particularly around the things that you felt were important around ensuring that the community have access to good information on the financial costs and benefits early in the process in order that that early engagement be effective. The importance of face-to-face engagement for the people of Marahiku Southland, for all people, including that there should be engagement with all of the councils and with Te Ao Marama rather than there may be engagement. And thirdly, around the time frame itself, particularly around building in time for councils and iwi to respond between each phase of the process, and around the potential conflict and confusion for the community around each council consulting on its long-term plan at the same or very similar time at which the end poll would take place, and particularly for this council, the additional matter of the representation review, which would also be taking place around the same time. Both of those matters speak to the future of local government and its programme within the region at the same time as that potential reorganisation poll also speaks to the future. This is obviously going to cause a risk of confusion. So we felt that it was positive to put forward some proposed changes to the timeline that still allows this process to proceed within good time, but to avoid some of those potential pitfalls that this council saw. So the matter's been drafted on that basis. The final point that I'll note is just around setting in place the terms of reference for working together on that alignment. There will be a lot of matters where each parties will agree. There will be other matters where there is not so much agreement. That's been similar through the process around the affordable water reform and the whatever the versions of the names for that reform that we've been through, and that terms of reference could be based on that alignment of organisations that took place across Otago Southland. So on that basis, Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions.
So, two observations from me. At the earlier this week, we had a Great South stakeholders meeting. The letter of expectation that was involved with that had a very late addition to it from the Southland District Council that suggested that in relation to the reorganisation proposal that Great South would coordinate the 4 councils involved. Both Gore, Environment Southland and myself opposed that, and that provision was taken out of their letter of expectation. So we stand alone as our own voice. And the other issue that I've previously raised is the fact that the Commission is going to refer to Clutha, Central Otago, Queenstown Lake Districts and Otago Regional Council, and I think that's an appropriate set of actions to be taken given that this is about a Southland reorganisation. Now, I understand from the Chair of Environment Southland that the Commission has now acknowledged that they'll, I think the words were restrict their engagement to Southland-based organisations and not go into the Otago area, but I don't have any confirmation of that yet. Just any other questions or reflections? No? No shaking of heads, all right. So if we have a mover and a seconder, Grant, thank you.
Seconder.
Yeah, Leslie, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Carried, thank you. And moving on to the draft code of conduct. Whoever's getting excited about that?
It's me, Mayor Clark.
Yeah,
Thank
excellent,
you. Yeah.
Excellent.
And as excited as one can be about a draft code of conduct. Thank you, Mayor Clark. This is much like Rhiannon. It was feeding on from a workshop that we had when we discussed the provisions of the draft code that the Local Government Commission have been charged by the Minister to develop. I have, much like Rhiannon, I have given reflection to what you have said and indicated your concerns, hopes and dreams were for the new code of conduct in the submission that I have drafted, and I had also identified just 1 or 2 additional matters since then. For example, our code of conduct currently applies to all of our appointed members, so our mana whenua representatives, and Mr Jackson is the chair of the Risk and Assurance Committee, is just having a indication from the Local Government Commission, for example, whether that would continue to apply and how that would work, where we've got a centralised dispute resolution process. So it was a question because most councils have appointed members, so how that would work. But with that, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Yeah, just a quick reflection from me, as probably the person who's had the most code of conducts in recent times. And from Rangi's perspective, who was involved with that, we had a discussion, I think, as this paper came through, about some of the grey areas around the issue of an elected member or a mayor acting in a role and being judged by the public on that, or being in a non-appointed role but still being in the community, where people know that you're a councillor or you're the mayor or the deputy mayor. And I think Rangi and I both agree that there's some need for some certainty around that. And so to put that into really lay terms, if you're a councillor and you're out and about at a function and you're not there as a councillor or an elected member, but you get into a bit of bother around alcohol or something, is that then subject to the public being able to raise a code of conduct, and where does that stop and start? And I think there's a need for some clarity there. The floor is yours, Rangi.
Yeah, interesting one. Look, my belief is that when we are elected, whether you have the top job as being mayor or you're elected as one of us councillors, you are public property and you must act as public property. And I wouldn't allow for any wriggle room that I'm off duty or whatever. Sorry. When you put your name forward, and the 11th of October will determine who are the new councillors and mayor, part of you standing is accepting that you are public property and you must act accordingly. So, sorry, I disagree with you on that one, Mr Mayor.
It's okay. I didn't try to get two in 1 week. Tom?
I support the submission. It really was a question for Michael. Given that we are making this submission at the end of September and we have a new triennium starting in 2.5 weeks, am I right in assuming that we would begin the new triennium with our own code of conduct, which would then later be overtaken if this, or do we expect the timing to be such that this will actually come in at the beginning of the triennium?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clark. No, it is anticipated that these will be ready, we understand, either late December or early into the new year. So we will be starting the new triennium with our own code of conducts. And we will, most councils, I believe, are likely to be looking at carrying on their current code of conducts or making minor adjustments as a consequence, rather than going through and working up a new code of conduct when we will be directed to replace them and adopt the government mandated one.
Further questions? Leslie?
It's not a question, Mr Chair, it's just a comment on page 453 of our documents. The question of members' capacity has been captured and very well covered in the draft letter. It is exactly what was indicated at our workshop as to exactly how far the member acting in their capacity as a member, and I quote that particular term, is to stretch. We have asked for consideration of that very issue. I don't think we could have made it plainer that that issue of members' capacity came up. Other than that, I think the letter has captured everything that the draft submission has captured everything that we brought up at that workshop, and I'm very happy to move it to go ahead.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. A seconder? Yeah, Trish, you were very quick. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Carried. End of term arrangements. Michael, is that you?
Yes, that's me again. Thank you, Mayor Clark, for the very final time this term. Thank you. So this report brings together the arrangements that need to be put in place. So there's a suite of recommendations there, apologies for that, to carry on the business of council while we have an interregnum between this term of council and the new council coming into office. Very simply, there are delegations there to the Chief Executive from Council to carry on the business of Council. We do not anticipate that there will be a great deal that the Chief Executive will be required to do, because most of the world know that we have an election. But of course, it's very important to note that the Chief Executive does it in consultation with Mayor Clark until the 16th of October, when he goes out of office, and then the Mayor-elect, whoever that may be. And during that period after the immediate election, if there is something super urgent, then we have the ability to call meetings, because you remain in office until the day of the declaration of results. The next up there is to the procedural step to carry on the Joint Shareholders Committee of Great South. And the Waste Advisory Group, or WasteNet. These are joint committees. They need to be there needs to be a resolution to carry them on so that they can continue their important work. And very finally, the District Licensing Committee as a statutory body continues to need appointments, because alcohol licensing and manager certificates do not stop. It is recommended that the chair of the District Licensing Committee and the Deputy Councillor Ludlow and Councillor Soper be appointed into commissioner roles until such time as the inaugural meeting of the new council and a new DLC is appointed. And just noting there that the remuneration proposed in Resolution 5 is statutory remuneration. There isn't anything we can do to influence that. And so with that, Mayor Clark, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, so just in relation to the date, so 16th of October, so I would still have authority under civil defence until that time, till the 16th.
Whenever the day of the declaration,
Okay.
you are remaining the mayor, and yes, in the event of a civil defence emergency, you would have that authority. But with that period from the 11th of October, we would anticipate that you would do that in consultation with the mayor-elect.
Sure, of course. Yep, absolutely. Any questions here, Tom?
Look at recommendation 3 and the those committees and memberships which need to carry on, and therefore, the members of those carry on. Is that is that a full list, in the sense that, for example, if I take my own case, where I'm the ICC representative on the Stadium Trust, for example. So, does that expire on the day of the election, or do I carry on for it? And there may be other examples. I'm just using that one as an example.
Look, absolutely. So this is a function that we need to keep the committees alive. The membership is essentially discharged at the date of the election, and new members will need to be appointed, but the committees can carry on. Where there are appointments to other bodies, such as the Stadium Trust, no, at the time, your appointment is because you are a councillor. At the time of the election, your appointment is discharged. So everybody appointed to independent bodies like that, at the date of the declaration, the day after, you are discharged from that, and we will await the inaugural meeting for those appointments to be made again.
Trish?
In terms of that, so we're delegated to the IPAG committee. We have a strategic planning meeting on the 18th of October. The 3 councillors are part of that, so how does that sit?
It's basically the 3 councillors. You would, quite simply, you are entitled to be there, but you are not able to represent the City Council anymore, because you are discharged from that duty until such time as the new council has met and made appointments to IPAG.
Okay, thank you.
So just as a reflection to that, Michael, if we use last term as an example, often the appointment to these smaller committees takes some time. So you go around the group and you find out who's interested, and Darren says he wants to do DLC again. That can take some time as we sort of work our way through what people are interested in and what they're not interested in. So we may, as Trish says, we may have that grey area beyond the 16th, which might go a week or two, because their priority is normally to appoint deputy mayor, to appoint chairs positions, and then ask who wants to be on what committee, certainly the outside ones.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. That is absolutely correct. But I can also assure you that the Chief Executive, myself and my team, will be working with the Mayor-elect to try and ensure that those provisions and positions can be filled as quickly as possible, but noting that they can't be confirmed until the inaugural meeting, when Council first, as you quite rightly say, appoint your and elect the Deputy Mayor, the chairs, and set the committees for the coming term. So I think Tom has his hand up.
Tom, yes?
Sorry, again, I'm going to use the stadium as an example, thinking that it may not be the only example. But for example, there are 3 elected members on the Stadium Trust board. If none of those come back, then the Stadium Trust no longer has the ability to conduct meetings. So I wondered if, in that circumstance, there was an opportunity to appoint a staff member, for example, as because it does not have to be an elected member, I don't think, in advance of that, because it could happen on following election day. The Stadium Trust could be in a position of being impossible, actually, to have a meeting. And it may not be the only example, but I just want to know of.
Thank you, Councillor. You are quite correct, and part of that is the delegation that goes through to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Mayor-elect, that there would able to be someone appointed to do that, noting that this is only a relatively brief period from the 16th of October through to the 4th of November. But you are quite correct, there could be, we have to provide for all those sort of possibilities and eventualities. The delegation to the Chief Executive would enable that to be completed in the event of that situation arising, and ideally we hope that that doesn't.
Any further discussion? No. A mover and a seconder. Alex and Ria, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried, thank you very much. Chief Executive's report, last one for the Triennium, and then we'll have a break.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mayor. I'm going to take the report as read. It is quite light. The only thing I would point out is that it's a long report in relation to the attachment, but that attachment is around the standards that are coming before us in relation to the Three Waters. It's an insight into what's coming up into the next triennium in relation to the new council and those standards that we're going to need to comply with under the regulations. So it's something more of an FYI report in relation to those. And I would highlight that we'll probably need to take those back to the incoming council fairly early, so they're very aware of those requirements as we go through. So just highlighting that.
Thank you for that. Any questions in relation to the Chief Executive's report? No?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Darren, yes, thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. 10-minute break, haven't we? Yep, so we have a 10-minute break now for those
We're live.
Okay, folks. So, this being the last meeting of council, we have the chance for 4 people who are not standing again to have an valedictory speech. I don't know whether this is given on age related, so we're going from the youngest to oldest, but you're first up, Evelyn.
And thank you, Mayor Clark.
So the floor is yours.
So shortly before the Reverend Cook speaks, we have a small presentation to each of our departing members. These are little badges that I see Councillor Ludlow is wearing that are a symbol of office that we used to give out. But we have that has passed, and now we are presenting them to departing members with their terms of service engraved upon them as a small acknowledgement and a keepsake of their time on the city council.
So the floor is yours, Evelyn.
Matua te whānau, to my o. I rā korowai o tō tātou atua, nāna nēna me katoa I hāngai. It's only fitting that I, who started my term as a deacon in the Anglican Church and completed as a priest in the Anglican Church, pay tribute to the God who shelters me every day in every way. O te mea tōrua, ki te mihi atu, ki te tātou ariki tā tumu te hiuhiu, I moi mai I te reka o aitua I tēnei rā. It is with great regret that I acknowledge the passing today of tā tumu te hiuhiu of Tū Wharetoa. In my life, I have met some very wonderful and powerful and genuine people. Tā tumu will be missed, not just by his people of Tū Wharetoa, but the wider community in which he graced with his humility, his kindness and his wisdom. It is traditional for us to acknowledge those who have gone before us. And last week, I lost a cousin who was part of the foundation of my life. There were only, I think, 3 people left who are older than me. I am not the oldest of those departing today, nor am I the youngest. However, Jack Sheehan, John Richard Sheehan, who taught me that you never accept a promise from somebody to do the dishes tomorrow and take them seriously. I was 7. We all believed him. He has still not done our dishes. My sister and I had a very early lesson in the careful parsing of English language, courtesy of Cousin Jack. Those who were with me as I started my journey. I was but a few days into my term when my second youngest sister died. We were more or less in quarantine at the time, going to people's funerals, public celebrations. It's quite possible that most of this table did not know, not only that I had 3 younger sisters, but one of them had died, and I mourned her deeply in private. But today I acknowledge the gift that was Sandra. We didn't see eye to eye very often in our older years, but she was a fierce advocate for kaitahu. She was a significant part of the claim settlement process, and her mark, probably more than mine, has been left in the legacy that my mokopuna will carry forward. William Baba Thompson, who I used to call my work husband, the fact that his wife also worked for our organisation didn't matter a jot. We had two different roles. I mourn his loss, as I do that of Mari Bull Beatty. Significant people in my life that shaped me as I am. When I came here, I didn't have any great expectations of what I would achieve. The fact that we knew that we didn't have votes at council meetings meant that we were unsure of how much influence and weight anything we said or did would carry. But thanks to some really staunch people, some of whom still sit around this table, some very empowering and enabling and encouraging staff who helped navigate the mysteries of the iPad. I apologise to all the tech staff who have had to save me, and particularly to Talini, whose patience is never ending. We've made it this far. I want to acknowledge the encouragement and support of Bishop Richard, whose birthday it is today, even though he is now with his Creator. We still think of him, we still appreciate him, and I appreciate the encouragement and support he gave me. And the very kind and encouraging words of Archbishop Don, who some of you may be disappointed to know encourages me to be somewhat forthright. Uphold te mana o te reo, te mana o tō tātou iwi, and those who I principally think that I have tried to advocate for, those who are less privileged, those who are often not heard, those people who struggle to be able to afford the bus, never mind find one that comes past or somewhere close to them. Those to whom Queen's Park is a mystery because they can't afford the public transport to go there and don't have a car. The privileges that I have had to be at citizenship ceremonies, the privileges that I have had to hear people make submissions, and sometimes to empower their voices to make it right through to our final decision. Even though I didn't get to vote, I got to encourage, I got to support, and I got to advocate for. To quote the song, regrets I have a few. I sometimes regret that, while some might think me fairly forthright, there have been slight controls on my tongue. I haven't always voiced my opinions as forthrightly as I might have thought that I could or should. But I hope that the people that I represent, my whānau, my kaitahu whānau, the whānau of the south of Invercargill, my whānau of those who know what it is like to worry about how they're going to pay for the next meal, whether they can go and get the medicines they need, who exist in areas of lots and lots of fast food, but actually meaningful food poverty because the quality of food is not there. I have tried as best as I can to represent them and you. I'm grateful to those people with whom I have worked who have been prepared to be open, to listen, to ask questions with the intent to listen, not to just ask them for the sake of form. Those, when I came, council was going through the process of working together. And the very first meeting that Pania and I went to, we had Councillor Scout came and sat with us. And the conversation that we had with him was interesting because, like me, he grew up here. But our stories were so different and our understandings were so different. But we were able to have an open and honest discussion. I think with fondness of Councillor Graham Lewis, of Councillor Lynn Abbott, with whom I also had some interesting conversations over time, one of whom is no longer with us on the face of this earth. And Lynn, your absence in my supermarket is missed. However, I wouldn't wish him to have been struggling as he was at that time. For those who are coming before or coming after us, I wish you to understand the power and the hurt that careless words create. The casual racism, the sometimes intentional sexism, the misogyny, the lack of respect for one another that I have seen in this room. Not from everybody. And some of you know who you are and some of you don't care, and that's okay. But it matters because you're elected by the people of this city, you're paid by them to be examples of what decision making can be. Councillors who have commented today how seldom they have got to wear their badges of office. That was the norm for my growing up. From the time that the badges of office became available, people wore them. Councillor Ludlow referred to the fact that we used to stand to speak, and we have stopped doing that. We have become very casual. And sometimes in that casualness, we have lost respect. We have lost respect for here, what we are doing, one another, and the people who sent you here, me included, because the people who sent me here are also ratepayers. They are citizens. So whilst I didn't go to a ballot box, I went before a panel of my peers, and we need not go too deeply into what a panel of your peers can actually do to you when they are thinking about whether they are going to send you somewhere to represent them. And the fact that you're not accountable just once every 3 years, but every time you walk into the marae, every time you get on a bus, every time you go to the supermarket, every time you think of having a quiet meal with your whānau, because your whānau are who sent you here, you are accountable. So if you think I had an easy ride, forget it. I most of all think about my grandfather. I think I said the first day that I came, when I got to make my opening speech. My grandfather was very fearful of councils, particularly because of rates. He was very bitter with the government of this country as a whole because of what it did to him and people like him during the Depression. The fact that he was not Māori enough to go on the Māori roll, but he was too Māori to get a full unemployment benefit, and therefore had to go and support his growing family by working the tailings at the Round Hill gold mines. My grandfather was bitter till the day he died. He would never have believed that a grandchild of his could have sat here and helped shape the city that he brought his children to in the 1930s. Goodness, I nearly dated him. Not the 1830s. That was a whole other ancestor. However, that I, as his granddaughter, can stand here today and say it's been 4 interesting years. You're not quite done with me. I will be here until Council makes a decision about the mana whenua seats at the first meeting, after which I hope I will name my replacement. But they will not send anybody here to be treated as we were, with discussions about diminution of our value to this organisation, or how much less you could choose to pay us because we weren't elected. All those different conversations that we're not supposed to know were held, but we do know were held. Not all of it was subtle. I hope I have added value. I hope that my contribution has been as much as anybody who went to the ballot box, if not more. That my service has been worthy, that I have upheld the mana of my whānau, of my hapu, my iwi, and my God in a way that has brought credit on those people who entrusted me. Most of all, what I hope is that you all, whether you stay or whether you go, remember that you're creating a future, not just for you and your children or your grandchildren, but as our whakatauki says, mo tātou a mo ka uri a muri aki nei, for us and all of our descendants for the generations to come. Because that is what this is. That is what the foundation of this place, Waihopai, and Invercargill, that's what it offered, that's what it promised, and that's what you're entrusted to do. All of us, whether we sit around this table or whether we're just the ones who amu in the pub, have a grumble, have a complaint, but don't do anything. Be the doers, be the thinkers, be the leaders, but be respectful of the fact that whether you like it or not, kaitahu have been here for 1,000 years, or our progenitors have been here for 1,000 years. And we will be here when you and your descendants decide that you want to live in some other place that's warmer or more culturally appropriate, or go home to Scotland, or Aroha. Whatever you decide to do, whatever your descendants decide to do, my descendants, just like my ancestors, will remain. And 2 Labrador dogs in Esk Street don't change that. Manaaki is still there, offering her embrace to those who choose to accept it. The weka will still lead you on a merry dance into the bush. If we ever get rid of the toxins out of New River Estuary, we may actually have Pātiki again. Areti Beach still has Pātiki. The tuna, the kina, the paua, the food of the forest that sustained our tupuna and yours, can return if that is what we choose to enhance and enable and encourage. Councillor Broad, I hope that your passion actually enables and encourages that to happen. And thank you for reminding us today of all the times we said that that's what we were going to do. Lastly, I really want to thank some people that are quite close to me here, but in particular, the people that made it easy for me to walk in the room, because a lot of people think that I'm quite brave or quite outspoken or quite outgoing. I am not. I've learnt to speak in public. I've learnt to advocate. But actually, I'd much rather hide in my little whare and not talk to anybody from the beginning of the day till the end of the day. So for that ability to come into this room, I want to thank Leslie, Councillor Soper. Our relationship goes back a considerable number of years. It seems only fitting we're leaving at the same time, although personally, I wish you could have carried on a bit longer, but I understand the need to call quits. And Councillor Ludlow, because both of you I knew before I came and sat here, and that made it a little bit easier for me to walk in the room. But to the Chief Executive, the Executive Leadership Team, the Tier 3 managers, those wonderful, wonderful governance support team who have saved my life more times than I want to count, who are full of encouragement and full of support. The comms team, who make me look good even when I'm not. And for my sisters, thank you. Thank you more than I can say. We don't always agree, but we always are there to support and encourage and try and make a difference. So for those of you who hope that the ratepayers will send you back, even if you're not sure whether they will or not, I wish you well. For those like Leslie and myself who have chosen the time of our departure, may I encourage everybody as time goes by to look at yourself honestly and say, is this the time that I should choose to go, as opposed to waiting for somebody to kick me in the butt? This is not the first time in this last year that I have had to make this announcement. I told my whānau that I would retire from this role before I was 75. I will squeak in with 4 days to spare, should we not meet till the 2nd of November, which is what Mr. Morris told me. So in other words, I will manage to keep my promise, but of course, you will be seeing me, because pains in the arse never really go away. They just find a new way of reinventing themselves. Lastly, to my son and my mokopuna, I have tried to influence and encourage the face of this city to be reflective of you. When I go to Otorohanga, I see your tupuna, I see maniapoto, I see all those things. There's a part of me that understands why you don't want to come back to Invercargill, to be disrespected, to be minimised. But this is your home, just as Otorohanga is your home. This is your whakapapa. This is your legacy. This is your birthright. Not exclusive to our whānau. It's something that we share with all of you, should you wish to accept. and for those who have reached out, have embraced and accepted, I thank you. For those of you who have yet to see the light, as I said earlier today, every night as I pray that you will. And I pray in the way of my tupuna, i rote te reo Māori. So, i raru i tērā whakaro, mihi atu ki a koutou, i noho mai nei i raru i te tuanui o tēnei whare o tātou i tēnei wā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e tātou e. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e tātou e.
Kia ora mātātou.
So, Leslie, it's your opportunity.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Waihopai, toko whenua. Ko Leslie Soper, toko ingoa. Kia ora. Tā lauwha lava, malo i lei. Hala, ni hao, sin chao, and warm Invercargill greetings to all. I first stood for public office in 1993. Since then, I have been a candidate in some 20 elections and an elected Health Board member, Labour Member of Parliament, and for the last 9 years, Invercargill City Councillor. People often ask me, why put yourself up for these often adversarial, open to public abuse elected positions? Well, it's not everyone's choice, but it was mine. And in no particular order, A, I'm a passionate believer in democracy and the democratic process, the rule of law, and the right for people to have a say. B, women need to be there to articulate concerns and perspectives and to make things happen. And we need to be there in credible numbers. Some of us have to put ourselves forward for others to follow. C, I learnt early that you can help individuals, but if you want lasting change that makes a difference in people's lives, go where the political power is and be an active participant. And D, what is the greatest thing? Hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. It is people, it is people, it is people. It is a privilege to serve the people. If you have the skills, time, energy, values, and perspective to do so, then go for it and put yourself forward. As examples of localism, among the issues that finally inspired me after many people asked to stand for the Invercargill City Council after I left Parliament was the misguided proposal to relocate the Children's Library to the windowless back of the library building. A proposal that was consulted on and halted, I am pleased to say. There was also the 2015 debacle of the expensive and unfit for purpose Christmas lights. That wouldn't happen under our current procurement policy. There was the need for CBD development and a return of the heart of the city, now accomplished with ICL and streetscape and despite today's earlier conversation, I have hopes for the future. And of course, there was the long-running matter of a new Southland Museum, growing to completion as we speak. I believe I have contributed positively to huge progress for Invercargill and for the region, and I have largely enjoyed my time in local government. I reflect that in my whole political career, I have worked with many good colleagues, 2 real Prime Ministers, 3 excellent District Health Board chairs, and 2 largely disappointing Invercargill mayors, both lucky to have very committed colleagues, dedicated to keeping the ship on track and keeping a functional team going. There comes a time in politics when you know it is your time to stand down with dignity. This is my time. I have seen too many people in politics who know their time has come but ignore that knowledge. I do not intend to be one of those who overstays and loses credibility and edge. There are many challenges ahead in local government, as there always will be. Water reforms, district plan, transport and spatial planning updates, amalgamation proposals, and the good old central governments trying to thrust more on local government with no additional funding. There's the challenge to balance essential infrastructure services with reasonable rate increases, the challenge of climate change and our regional response, the challenge for this council, one of the few brave enough to have stayed in the provision of elderly housing, to maintain and add to that portfolio. There will always be challenges. I have done my best to make my contribution. Into other hands, I leave the next steps. But I am confident that this council, with an AA credit rating, a good net debt position, and a sound revenue and financing policy, has built a sound base for the future. I could go on all sorts of past issues, including pulling a council back from the brink of dysfunction by working together. However, I want to focus on some thoughts for the future and some messages for the voting public. These are very much framed on the essential fact that everything we do in local government at this council table affects every one of your lives every day. A voting turnout of 53.2% is horrifyingly low. Please get out and cast your votes in impressive numbers this election. There's still plenty of time to find out who the candidates are and what they stand for, and to make your choices. You may be surprised to hear me say that there is no place for tickets in local body politics. What you want is 12 independent and thoughtful, open-minded councillors and one mayor, prepared to listen, research, consider, and actually work as a team. And to incoming and new councillors, remember that you are only one of 12 B team players. Remember that all governance processes take longer than you think they should, because they usually involve essential engagement and consultation processes. You don't have to be a lawyer or an accountant to serve on council, though it sometimes helps. Read the Local Government Act and other essential documents you will be introduced to at induction. Know your standing orders and your code of conduct. Declare conflicts. Leave your ego and any predetermination at the door. Read all the papers and never be that councillor whose eyes glaze over at the finances. Ask searching questions, but never be exposed as the councillor whose questions were all already answered in the meeting papers. Take a breath. Respect your experienced councillors, colleagues and staff. Don't abstain unless your conflict declaration requires it. People elected you to be a decision maker, not an abstainer. Respect for collective responsibility, though, once a vote is taken, is a real thing. Enjoy your time on council. To ICC CEOs and executive teams past and present, and staff of the many teams I have dealt with over 9 years, most recently those on the finance, policy, community, infrastructure and governance teams, too many to spend the next half hour naming. Thank you for your hard work and well-reasoned reports and background papers, for wise words and quick responses, for basically keeping the engine of local government running. Again, hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. It is people, it is people, it is people. The contributions of the people who do the background work are as essential to the team as those in the foreground. I received this apt Māori proverb as a gift when I entered Parliament. Whaia e koe, kei te iti kahurangi, kei te tuaho koe, me he manga tai tai. Seek the treasure you value most dearly. If you bow your head, let it be to a lofty mountain. I never did find that lofty mountain to bow to. However, there are many treasures to serving in local government. Guard them well for the people, for the future. Thrice thank you. Kia ora, tātou, katoa, matiwa.
E hara I te mea no nai nei te aroha no ngā tupu nai tuku iho I tuku iho.
Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll remain seated if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I'd like to stand up. It's been an honour and a pleasure to serve our great city as a city councillor for 21 years and also 6 years on the Licensing Trust Board. I have met thousands and thousands of good, friendly people. I've met a few ratbags along the way, but today I must thank our hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that have put us on the map. Volunteers from Invercargill and the wider Southland area. They have done so much for us. I'll go back to 1956 at an agenda item earlier. They were talking about 1856, but that's a bit far back for me. In 1956, I went to a car race meeting as a 10-year-old. It was early February. My mother, my uncle and auntie, my grandparents went. It was held out at Royal Bush, Breeze Road Racing Circuit. And the farmers' paddocks for miles around the circuit, there was people there. And most people had never seen car racing before. They may have seen snippets of it if they used to go to the local movie theatres. We had 4 in the town at that time. So the Breeze Road circuit, it was just absolutely brilliant. And it was all organised by the Southland Sports Car Club, and there are dozens and dozens of volunteers that were flag marshals and whatever else they done for the event. At the same time, I was unaware of it, but the same group had spoken to the Southland District Council acquiring a block of land just over the Oriti River Bridge on the way to Sandy Point. I know, and the way to Oriti Beach. I know the area well because as a kid, me and my mates used to go there out to the beach to swim and buy a hot dog at the store there and get sand all over it. But that's another story. So what these volunteers done, they either purchased or got lease of the land and come up with an idea that they were going to build their own racing circuit. The land was full of lupins and sand dunes. One of their friends or one of their members, a farmer, bought a farm vehicle in so they could survey the ground, drive around. They'd got from White's Aviation, they got overhead photographs of the area. There was no drones that they could put up like we have today. And they put in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours. And in 1958, Tiratonga was born. They had one main event a year at the end of January, and people come from afar, from all around the South Island, maybe from the North Island. Invercargill had 12 traffic officers in those days, and they are all out on duty, directing the traffic. There was traffic jams. There were people trying to get there. There was traffic jams right out East Road past the Eastern Cemetery. They had to call the Ministry of Transport traffic officers and police to help. But that was great. And ever since then, they had that big meeting. They had club meetings through the year. But they've got those international drivers. I remember so well, the well-known names. One there raced there about 9 years ago, 10 years ago. He raced in the Formula One last Saturday morning, was it? Lando Norris, I think his name was. But these volunteers, they had a vision, they done it. They done it as proud. Also in 1956, I said to my mother and my grandparents, I'm going uptown to see the start of a cycle race. I said, a good friend, Mr. Adamson, the mayor, is going to pull the starter's gun. And what do you want to do that for? I said, because I want to. So we knew Mr. Adamson well. He lived in High Street and we lived in Chelmsford Street, but we had the same grocer. And quite often Mr. Adamson would pick my mother and myself up from the bus stop and give us a free ride in town. I was always amazed with Mr. Adamson, and he only had half an arm. He had half an arm and had a sock over it. And as a wee kid, when he was taking us to town, numerous occasions, to save my mother paying for a bus fares, of course, I've never ever, witnessed a man with one arm driving a car. Just incidentally, his son-in-law was Brian Talboys, Sir Brian Talboys, as we know now, and he was Deputy Prime Minister for a time. So I went down to see the bike race start, and Mr. Adamson blew the whistle, pulled the trigger. It was a job that Sonny Broad used to do at the track and other road races. So that event was a 3-day event, and they had volunteers everywhere, flag marshals, the same as they did for the motor racing. That event has grown in stature over the years, grown. It's an international event now, and it's televised all the way around the world. And it highlights, they have the helicopters up with the cameras, it highlights our lovely province. They take shots of Stewart Island, my favourite place over there, Ulver Island. They've just done a great job, these volunteers. They've really done a brilliant job all round. Also, I'd like to thank the volunteers of Age Concern Southland. We have 3 paid staff members there, but they put out hundreds and hundreds of meals a week to the elderly in Invercargill. This is not Meals on Wheels, this is Age Concern Southland. They do a great job, and the volunteers run the Oyster and Seafood Festival at Bluff, mainly Bluffies, but a few Invercargillites helped them out. They had a tough journey. They fought the council for a number of years to get the old club hotel. They won in the end, but it cost them over $130,000 in court and lawyers' fees. I got elected to the Invercargill Licensing Trust in 1995. In 1997, I was invited to the grand gala opening of Splash Palace. It was held in a big marquee over behind the then West Stand that backs onto Ellis Road. And our mayor at the time was David Harrington, Mr. Jim Bolger, he turned up. They had a live lotto draw, but I tell you, it wasn't really, it was all smoke and mirrors, but the people viewing from around the country thought it was live. I had a guided tour of the facility a few days later with Crosby Greaves, the pool manager, and other people. And I couldn't believe it. There's no seating. No seating for other swimmers when they're waiting, for the parents or grandparents or their siblings to sit. And I thought, this is wrong. An 8-lane Olympic pool with no seating. No learners pool. I thought, gee, they closed 3 pools to open it. The old Tepid pool in Collins Street, which Evelyn would know well, and also the learners pool that was opened in 1956 for a £20,000 donation from the Licensing Trust, and the pool up at the Coldstream pool up by side Boys High. And so they opened this new facility with no seatings, no seating whatsoever, a couple of chairs for the lifeguards, and no learners pool. I made a comment to some of the councillors at the time, oh, we didn't have the money. I said, you do it once, you do it proper. You don't go back. I said, it's going to cost you a lot of money, If you go down there now and drive in the driveway to the car park, it's the overhang. They had to demolish the new wall, or partly demolished, to put seating, and that's the overhang where the seating is. And it took a number of years. I was behind the getting a learner swimming pool, but it took probably 4 or 5 years, and I was the chairman of the swimming pool committee, the learner swimming pool committee. There was a lot of hoo-ha about that around the place, and Neil Boniface, a fellow board member of the Licensing Trust, convinced me to stand for council. And I thought, I'll sort those out. Will I ever? So, making poor decisions on a swimming pool. What else? What other stupid decisions will they make? Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of people must have thought similar to me. There was a complete turnaround in councillors. We got a new mayor. Mayor Tim was back on board, and 6 new councillors. And Darren was one of them. I thought, this will be easy, I'll take them to bits. I came here, downstairs where the council chamber was. Darren was there. We sat through quite a few meetings. I've never seen a radio announcer be silent for so long. He was our top radio announcer at the time. And myself, being a salesman, I thought I'd give it to them. I wasn't scared to get up and speak, but I was. I was absolutely petrified. I wasn't used to being in a council chamber with an audience. It was far different being round a board table. I'd been round a few of them at the time. So, back to the ILT. The ILT board, they said, well, it was Jim Fenton, former deputy mayor of Invercargill and a former board member. It's not funny, but I got on in his place on the ILT, and I took his place at the city councils. And we were good friends because we raced a number of horses together in the early 1970s. But bad luck for him and good luck for me. You know, Jim's vision was to build a 2-court not a stadium, building, so we could house mainly the netballers. Robin Broughton's girls, well, Ray Harper, they were his girls too. The Southern Sting, they were called then. We went to the railway yards, we went to, looked at the race course, the architect guy, Mr. Simpson. I'd be an ideal place in 4th Street, right beside the Masonic Lodge. Ray Harper, being a rugby man from way back, he wanted it behind the West Stand at the rugby park. Surrey Park was the preferred option. We thought, well, we've got plenty of spaces there, plenty of space. So we spoke to all sporting bodies, right from darts to whatever, courts, I suppose. Probably a bit silly saying that, but we talked to people, we talked to the Home and Pigeon Club, we talked to the Cat Fanciers Club, we talked to everyone imaginable to see what size stadium. So we ended up with about an 8-court stadium, I think it was, thereabouts. So Ray said, well, we better go door knocking. And at that time my wife and I we sold our business and I had a couple of months to spare, even though I didn't need 2 months. So we got a flyer made up and we went round the neighbourhood and to let them know what we intended to do and we'd have a meeting at the Ascot Park. So Ray Harper and I went out there. He said, I'll start on Tay Street, up near Lithgow Street, and I started beside the Surrey Park School in Isabella Street. Knocked on the first door, told the man, it all about it was Ross Ronald, a well-known radio DJ in town. Yeah, he got my support. I said, well, come to the meeting. So I must have done about 3/4 of the territory, or talked faster. But I said, I met Ray, and I said, well, we've done it. He said, I've got one stumbling block. He said, a pommy fella. I said, you should say, be polite. An Englishman. He said he's going to oppose it. So this fella turned up at the meeting. Yeah, I come from England. We had football clubs and they boozed up all night, and my property's going to devalue. He just went on and on and on. He gained a bit of support from at the meeting. And Ray said, I told you we'd have trouble with that man. Didn't actually call him a man, but that was all right. And there was also another lady, house I call her, and I used to knock around with her brother as a teenager. And she ran her business from home, and she said the noise would probably drive her clients crazy and she'd lose her customers. So we went back to there was no stadium trust formed at that stage, it was just board members and friends. So what happened, we went back to others and spoke to them, and we were getting them on side, and someone came up with a brilliant idea. Why don't we buy that chap's house to shut him up? Because he threatened court action and everything. So a well-known real estate agent in town said, I'll do it. So we went and knocked on his door and said, I'm so-and-so, here's my card, I'm a real estate agent. I've got a little old lady that's looking at buying your house. How much do you want for it? He said, well, it wasn't for sale, but those buggers at the council and everyone else, yeah, I'll sell. So he said to him, well, I'll bring two of the ladies, I don't know if he said nieces or daughters along to have a look through. But unbeknown to me at the time, it was all set up. There was no little old ladies. We just wanted rid of them. So I said to Ray Harper, where are we getting the money from? I said, you've got to tell me. He said, we've got the money sorted out. I said, right. So they bought the house. I said, what are you going to do with it now, Harps? He said, I don't know, we'll probably rent it for a while. I said, okay. I said, what about the hairdresser along the road? He said, I'll go and talk to her. I said, well, don't talk to her in your gruff voice. You're not talking to rugby players. I said, go be nice to her. Rang me up, Pete, I've done it. He said, I'm giving her all new windows in her house, double glazing. I said, how are you going to pay for it? He said, I don't know. Probably the same place the money come from to buy that chap's house. So that's what we went through. And Sylvia, the hairdresser, was quite happy. She got glazed windows all the way around. So that's what happened. We got the stadium, but then there was a man, head of Parks and Reserves, Robin Pagan. And Harps, as we called him, Mr. Harper, went to Richard King. God, we've got to jump bloody hurdles and get through hoops. There's Mr. Pagan, because he's in charge of Parks and Reserve. We just can't build a huge building. Well, you sort it out, Mr. King. You sort it out. We'll worry about the building. So I'd always read about bullies in the workplace. I worked at a lot of places. I employed a lot of staff. In 2004, we got a new councillor on board. I think it was 2004. From almost day one, he became very abusive at fellow councillors. If he didn't like what you said during a meeting, or what you said to the media, the language that came out of that man's mouth, it was shocking. The first one to get the blunt of it was Councillor Pottinger. He called him for everything in the committee room. There was female staff there. It was a shocking display. I walked out with Rangi and said, look, that's terrible. So another time, our Deputy Mayor, the lady from South Africa, Kruger, she left the chamber at times in tears. She was a very strong lady. She was no crybaby. But the abuse that she had to put up with. The worst of the lot was when Councillor Lindsay Abbott came back from a big operation in Dunedin Hospital. He came back into the chamber. He came there early before a meeting. There was myself, Councillor Thelma Buck, the bully councillor, of course, and another councillor. So he went up to Lindsay, and just the language was it was disgraceful. He stood up, and sort of staggered on his feet, and he got up, and this councillor was poking him in the chest and started pushing him. Thelma cried out, leave him alone, leave him alone. We thought Lindsay was going to end up on his back and hitting his head on the tables that were behind him. It was a shocking display. I spoke about this at Lindsay's funeral. On Friday, I went out and called to see Sir Tim Shadbolt and told him about it, what I was going to say about that bully. And I went out to the cemetery and had a wee yarn to Lindsay at his graveside, next door to his sister, his only sister and brother-in-law. That was damn shocking. We laid complaints. Oh, the other councillor when Lindsay was being assaulted and abused, the other councillor, I said, that was shocking. He said, I didn't see a thing. I said, well, you must have been looking out the window. You must have heard it. He said, I heard nothing. I said, you're like the three monkeys. See nothing, say nothing, hear nothing. I said, you didn't turn out a very good fellow. You didn't either. But we laid complaints on the code of conduct against this councillor. But I tell you, he was part of the old boys network, and it was just brushed under the carpet. It was just brushed under the carpet. Like the great things about our city, SIT zero fees. Penny Simmons' idea, but as I said previously and other times, that Sir Tim was the driving force behind it. Our Invercargill Airport, we've got the third largest runway in the country. Not many planes, international planes come in. One or two occasionally. Tony Laker, my friend, the late Tony Laker, put on a trip to the Melbourne Cup. We've got our ILT stadium. We've had international events there, huge events. We even had Joseph Parker there, who I hope very shortly will become world champion, boxing champion, won the title. Liz, who works here, she's here today. She was here earlier. She was part of the team from Venture South and they put it all together. We've got our velodrome, of course. Went out there and had a look around that yesterday. Coming up in 2034, about 8 or 9 years away, Commonwealth Games are going to hit New Zealand. And I've got in my diary to talk to local cycling officials. I'm sure with the knowledge of our cycling people here, we could run the road racing for the the Commonwealth Games here. I'm not too sure about the velodrome, getting the indoor racing. I think Cambridge would have their foot in the door first. So I went down to Splash Palace also yesterday and had a look around. I was going to have a look at the library, but I couldn't get a car park handy. Other great things in Macargill, I've also mentioned Tiratonga, the cycle tour, Rugby Southland's on a high, 8,000 people, over 8,000 for the Otago game, and we had 5,000 for the other game, the Shield Challenge, and about 3.5 before. We've got I'm tied up with horse racing, as most people will know. We have over 25 meetings a year, but there are 6 plus large ones, and people come from all throughout New Zealand to attend those race meetings. So we've got so much going for us. And I must thank our staff, Parks and Reserves. Queen's Park is just a marvellous place. You see people there walking through, people being pushed in wheelchairs, people with their dogs. I won't say Labradors, but I did. But we've got great funders. We've got the ILT, Community Trust of Southland, the Richardson Group. They helped me with a couple of big events, and I brought Ivan Major here with 16 international speedway riders. And that night, the next day, it cost a lot of money, but Bill Richardson was right behind and put a lot of money. We got 10,000 people, and I was in charge of food and beverage, which I was quite good at doing, but not that number. But I had so many volunteers. The volunteers from Ariti Park Speedway, it was their idea, but I started up a company just in case it bellied up, but it didn't. The Mad Butcher rang me from Auckland. A couple of days later, he called me Kite. Kite, you pulled it off. How did you do it? I said, with volunteers, mate. What's your next act, boy? What's your next act? I said, I'm going to bring the Vodafone Warriors to Invercargill. What? How are you going to do that? I said, Butcher, with your help. I said, who do I contact? He said, Don Mann, Communications Manager at Warriors. I said, that'll do. I said, well, you got me his fax number, his email address, landline, cell phone, and I'll ring him. I said, we'll make it happen. So 2 days later, he rang me. Have you spoken to Don Mann yet? I said, no, Butcher. I said, you haven't supplied me with his details. He hung up on my ear. So, but later that evening, I got all the information that I needed. So I had a meeting with all the funders again. I had a meeting with Roger Clark and the City Council here. I said, if you do all the ticketing, I got a hold of Greg Dawson, a fellow I knew, I didn't know at the time, but got to know him extra well. And we pulled it off. 15,000 people. It was only a pre-season game, but 15,000 people, and the town was humming. So it was quite interesting because the Highlanders played there, I think, about 6 weeks later. They only had 12,000 people. So I've got the Mad Butcher, Sir Peter Leach, to thank for what he's done for Southland. He used to come down. I introduced him to Southland way back, I don't know how many years ago, brought him down for a horse race meeting, and he got to know the people at Bluff, and they got him down there year after year. And he used to stay in the old club hotel with Murray Flynn and booze up and tell stories and that. But look, it's not all about me, what I've done. It's about the volunteers that have helped me. So look, I just thank them again. But last but not least, I would like to thank two people. A lady I know quite well. I sold her a stereo way back when she was a teenager. Michael Skerritt would know her well because her name was Lisa Patterson, and she used to sing in a duo with your late brother Peter. You would remember Lisa. Well, Lisa came to visit me after my first medical misadventure. I was in a bad way. I lost 20 kgs in weight. And Lisa came to visit me this night, and with her daughter Tori. Lisa was a chef in her first part of her life, and I helped her set up the business at the racecourse, doing all the catering, and she does 800 or 900 school lunches. No thanks. 1,200, but he cut the funding down. So Lisa and her daughter Tori come to visit me this night. It was in the middle of November. She said, "Pete, what's wrong with her?" I said, "I don't know. It's happened under the blankets." Tori said, "Can I have a look?" I said, "By all means." My knee had exploded. Tori said, "Can I take photos?" She forwarded them to the hospital. She rang her mum about half an hour later. "We'll get the ambulance." And Lisa said, "No, I'll get there quicker. I'll take Pete down." So I had an emergency operation on my knee that night, midnight. They had to call, it was a different surgeon that done the first one at Southern Cross it was, and it was a different surgeon. They had to call staff out at midnight. They'd done the operation. Now, I woke up, didn't know where I was. I was away with the fairies. I thought I was in a television studio, and I'd seen my good friend Jamie Searle there. I thought I was going to be interviewed about horse racing. I was away with the fairies. I was in a bad state. And the next morning the surgeon came along, and the head doctor from Kew. They said, "You're lucky you got here in time. The surgeon said you had one heart attack. You had a heart attack during your operation." And the senior doctor said, No, Mr. Sanderford, he had two. So then they talked to me. They said, "How did you get here?" And I said, "Well, two ladies." I said, "A former nurse and her daughter, a current nurse. Tori works at Queen's Park Medical Centre." I say to you girls, a big thank you. I've told you before, but you saved my life. Thank you, girls. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Mayor.
Right? Yeah. Right, I'm going to have the record for the shortest one. Yeah, I knew that would wake you up, Darren. All right, here we go. For those who already know, I'm a Virgo. Everything gets done yesterday. So I've circulated a list in the last couple of weeks and the last couple of days to senior staff with about 40 things that we've achieved in the last 5 years, most of it in the last 3 years. So special thanks to those councillors around the table and to the senior staff as well, because while we've had our distractions and we've had issues that have been created by some indiscretions by me, we have got an awful lot done in that very short period of time. Oh, do you want me to smile, Robin? So the overall picture for me, being a Virgo, is our net debt is great. We've got on top of 3 waters. We've got the inner city ICL and museum going well, and we've persevered with Recycle South and retaining those jobs there. The future challenges I see going forward for those that are standing again are amalgamation, 3 waters, rates capping, alternative water, future income streams, aquaculture expansion, and last but not least, Destination Bluff for tourism. So I have some people in the community that I think are really important to acknowledge. Joss and Scott have been absolutely marvellous for the city over the last 10 years or more. Jeff Thompson and Gare Thompson also invest quite heavily in the city. Paddy and Chris at the ILT, Margot and Jackie at the Community Trust, Chris at TY, Ian and Charmy at Great South, Darryl at SIT, Tom and Joe down at the stadium, and last but not least, Terry, who is involved with Murahiki Regeneration. And so I have a special thanks to Jane, who's sitting over in the back corner there, and Michelle for keeping me sane on things like new technology. So like Evelyn, I'm absolutely hopeless at that. But I also want to acknowledge that during this term, 3 of our colleagues have lost wives during that period, and yet they've continued to serve on our community, and that's been a real hard ask. So acknowledgement to Peter and to Barry and to Michael Scarrett that sits at the back there. But I also want to reflect on 3 or 4 people that have really made it a lot easier for me. Certainly Grant, with your first term on council and being the museum lead has not been easy for you. But I'm pleased that you'll have the museum open by the end of next year. So really pleased with that, and I think it's been some hard yards for you at times. Tom, I want to acknowledge that you've been a very loyal deputy to me. You've been excellent in your advice, which sometimes comes with a bit of a barb, and you've said to me on occasion, I didn't sign up for this. But it was good that you made me reflect, and certainly you led and carried council through some periods when I had some poor health, and I had some indiscretions that probably we could all have done without. Also like to acknowledge Penny Simmons, our local MP. In the 50 years I've been in Southland, Penny is by far the best MP that I've come across. Her ability to connect me into top ministers and MPs in the coalition government has been outstanding, and it's allowed me to quietly advocate for quite a few things. Also want to acknowledge my younger brother in the back room there, Michael, for his guidance and knowledge on things around Mana Whenua, and for his mana in the community, and he's been a very good friend during that period. And I also want to finally acknowledge Karen, and for those that read sign language, I don't know what that means. But one thing that I guess I want to observe is that for those that are looking to be certainly in the mayoral or deputy mayoral role, there's care to be taken around offloading to your partner. And one of the things I've learned in the last 5 years is that it is too easy to carry your baggage home, to offload to your dearly beloved ones, and then you leave them with nowhere to offload either. And so there comes a cost at home, so just signalling that going forward. And so finally, I guess people often ask me, what are you most proud of? And contrary to common belief, it's not the museum. It was my ability to engage very early on in the current term of government with the 5 RMA ministers, and this is where Penny kicked in, to be able to change the narrative and the regulations regarding wastewater discharges. And all by ministers, that saves New Zealand, that refocuses, saved New Zealand billions of dollars. So I was really proud of that. So my next travel overseas will probably be South Africa. And going forward, I wish you all well for the elections, and for those retiring, a healthy retirement. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Michael didn't tap his pen, so that means I did it another 5 minutes.
Just hit 5.
Just hit 5 minutes.
Nice.
So, with that, we need to move into public excluded. Leslie, thank
I'll
you.
move that, Wayne.
Yes. Darren, yes, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
For those at the back of the room that are thinking about the free food and a drink afterwards, you're listening, Michael? We will only be a very short period of time if you want to hang around and have a drink. We do have a bottle of Chinese whiskey there for you.
More of that stuff.
Right.